Awesome. So welcome everyone. We are really excited to start off our spring 2023 semester sessions with all of our Tech Talk lineup. This is really, really exciting just to kind of be back together and get everyone here and going. I know it's January. We're kind of starting off slow. Everyone's sort of, if you're like me, dragging about. But we're really, really excited to share with you guys our expertise and just help you develop your classes, your teaching environment, work environment as much as possible. So today we are going to be doing collaborating and connecting with Google Calendar and Google Chat. I love all things Google, but these are probably the two most things that I use even more than just Google itself, Google Drive. These are the two applications that are the most important, I feel, for myself. So I'm real excited about them. This session is brought to you through Propel. It's an NMHED funded leadership project, and all of these webinars will be recorded and used for future use, whether you want to come back and relook at them or have somebody else look at them later on. Oh, my name is Meriah Lira. I will be presenting this. Oh, man, look at that. I knew my name was wrong on here. I need to update that, but I will be presenting this first portion, and we have our wonderful moderator on there, Jamie Trujillo. Cool. So we're going to start with opening thoughts, and I wanted this to be a little bit of interaction. And the question that I have, and it's going to be in a Jamboard, and Jamie does have that up, is there are two questions here, or two statements. My ability to communicate with my students is, and my ability to communicate with my coworkers is. So all you're going to do is you're going to grab one of these dots and you're going to say, move it to excellent, good, could use work, or non-existent. So with your students, you're going to use these blue dots. With your coworkers, how you feel your abilities are, you're going to use with these gray dots. Cool. And I believe everyone's got it on here. So perfect. So I want to look at it just a little bit. And I absolutely love this. Is probably one of my favorite things because I know with our students, we're always like, we need to work with our students. We need to continue with them and do as much as we can. But we kind of forget that we have a whole support system, or we should all have a support system behind us. And we tend to leave our coworkers out of it just because we're so student driven, which is wonderful. But we can't be a one-man band, which is kind of what we want to talk about today. So thank you for that. And I just want to have this open discussion really quick. It's another activity, but how do you currently collaborate with students and coworkers? And do you feel that this method or this approach is effective? So I'm going to kind of go off first right quick, just kind of give some ideas, because I know when I presented this question before, a lot of people were like, well, I don't quite know what you mean. So one of the things I do with my students is always that face-to-face communication, because a lot of them are striving to have someone to connect to. Do I always feel it's the best? Probably not, because I need to work on my approach to certain situations. I always tell everyone whenever we're at meetings, I tend to be the quote unquote mean one, just because I say no a lot more often than my other coworkers. So is it effective? Somewhat. With coworkers, I tend to use more chats and emails, not necessarily the face-to-face, just because I am running all around. Is it effective? Sometimes. Sometimes there are those times where I do need to be in there. So I just want to open up the floor, and there's very few of us, so I would love to hear you guys just come on, turn on your mic and answer these two questions.
Well, because I teach ESL, I find that WhatsApp works a lot better for me than Google, because my students know it already and they even form their own groups. So WhatsApp works pretty well.
Oh.
And for me, I don't teach directly, but I do interact with students. Um, it's kind of like akin to being the principal, so it's not always the best whenever I have to meet with a student, but I try, especially when it's, for example, a persistence conference where we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we get you to come to class, keep coming to class, improve your attendance. Those tend to be in person, but sometimes students reach out to me, so that's oftentimes with email. If they have a question or if they want to transfer classes or, if they have any kind of issue that they want to talk about, then that's usually via email. But I try to make communication with students as in person as possible. As far as coworkers, just a lot of various tools. Email is probably, of course, the biggest one. And then we do have a Google Chat, a GChat group that we use to send immediate questions or messages, as well as texting and things like that. So we use a lot of different communication tools, and it really depends on the staff member as to which is most effective. We actually asked each other this during a staff meeting: which method of communication do you recommend or do you prefer? And that's what we try to use.
Nice. That is a really great question. I love that.
Well, I have a lot of problems with my coworkers because I have an ENMUR email, which I rarely use. I always use my NMDelt email. And I've asked that please send everything to my NMDelt email. And half of the time, someone says, "Oh, did you see such and such email?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't get it." And it's because they sent it to the NMUR. And I just forget to check that. So Tina had showed me, before when I worked for ACE, we could combine those. But I've tried with the NMUR and I just can't find it how to do that, to send it to my NMDelt.
That is actually a really good idea because a lot of people, I do that as well. I'm like, oh, I'm guilty. I see that right there. Because I have a clovis.edu and it's always the last one I go to. I should be a lot better at it, but I'm not. Because it is, that preference. And I love how Jamie said is that it varies within teachers and it varies with how they're utilizing it. Or maybe some of them don't know how to really make it function. Or effectively function, like the basics, but to actually maximize the usefulness of it, that's always difficult. And so a lot of people will always revert. And I love how you said, Nancy, is our students revert to WhatsApp. And so one of the things that I had to do in my classroom, because they created the WhatsApp app, and I have WhatsApp just for personal uses, and so they added me on there, and I was like, all right, this one can be for personal activities. But for academic, we're going to use Google Chat. And it actually worked really well because they have the long conversations in WhatsApp. But for
That's true. Very true.
Google Chat, they realize, okay, this is for school. So we could have really, really good discussions about homework or questions that they had. Whereas in the other one, they could really be informal and talk about their day and different things. And so it's really interesting is the biggest thing is like, what are you using it for and how are you going to use it? And it's always good. You don't have to have one tool. You can have multiple tools, which is really great because there's not just one perfect way. If there was, wow, that would be amazing. But everyone's different and everybody has different capabilities and abilities, and it's how you're going to approach it. Thank you guys. I love open discussions. Cool. So we're going to start with Google Calendar. I love this because I started playing around with how I was going to do it. And I know we had planned on doing this webinar in the fall and it just kind of fell through. So I was redoing it again and I started laughing because my Google Calendar is a total wreck this week. This last week has been a mess, but it has been wonderful because it's actually kept me very organized in a way that I was able, because if you see my screen, it says in Google Calendar, did you know you can schedule meetings, quickly search for available meeting times between domain accounts, which means if you have an NMDelt account, you can search within all of those NMDelt accounts. If it's just a regular Gmail, you can search through all Gmails. They don't cross over. So if you have an NMDelt account and you're just trying to use the Gmail account, they don't sync together. It's just one of those things. So if you have anything else, it has to be that domain. But you can also schedule times for works and breaks, that self-care and mental health. So one of the things I was saying is we have been trying to get teachers and we've had a lot of applicants. So myself and my other coworker, we have been like dividing and conquering. So I'll call a couple of applicants, he'll call a couple of applicants, and we're looking on Google Calendar and quickly figuring out a good time to schedule all of those. And it has worked so smoothly. And we have gotten more people in without having to like run back and forth to each other's office to be like, hey, can you meet this time? Can you meet that time? We just look on the Google Calendar and everything is there and everything is available. Um, and you can search for multiple people, which we're going to do a quick activity here after a while, just to show you how you can really navigate this and use it to its fullness. So how does this work in the classroom? Because I know calendars, people are like, well, it's just to organize. Well, that's wonderful and all, but Google Calendar also syncs with Google Classroom. So if you show your students how to utilize an organized material, I know a lot of our students, especially if you're teaching ESL, they like that paper pencil. But we want to build some digital skills as well, that digital literacy aspect where we're teaching them how to use all of the tech tools that they have to better help them. Because if you're like me and you open up your calendar, half of the time I open up to the wrong month. And I have done that so many times where I write down something and I know it's there and I can't find it afterwards because the paper calendars can sometimes get a little messy, confusing if you're not paying full attention. Not that it doesn't happen in a digital setting, but it's a little bit easier to navigate and make sure that you're there. So if you do something in Google Classroom, it syncs those class times, all of assignments, tutoring opportunities, all of those can sync from your Google Classroom to your Google Calendar. So that way you don't forget something. And that way students can also see when their times are, when their assignments are due, and anything else that they need that is related to that classroom. Students can also suggest times. So if we put some responsibility back on them, if they're like, oh, teacher, I don't understand this. Can you help me? Can we meet up with a tutoring time or something? It gives them some of those digital literacy skills, problem solving, critical thinking. It puts it back on them to become responsible and to become that good citizen, to be like, all right, these are my responsibilities. Let me take it a step further. I shouldn't depend on my teacher all of the time to make those appointments. I can make that appointment with my teacher. So if you have your class times and your calendar set all out, your students can better access that communication with you, which is fun. I will say with ESL students, they get really, really excited. And I believe, Nancy, you teach ESL, correct?
Right.
ESL students, when I showed them this feature, I had so many appointments. It was really, really funny because they just wanted to come and talk about random things, but it gave them that opportunity to utilize an app, a tool that they never had before. And a lot of them are actually scheduling their lives and their days in the Google Calendar. So that way they can easily pick it up and be like, oh no, let's have lunch this day or not this day, or I'm available this time or not that time. And so it gives them a better outlet than, some of the standard paper and pencil. And I like paper calendars. I like the little planners. But sometimes, if you leave it at home, you're not going to have it at work to do that. And I think they're realizing that. So I know our ESL students have absolutely loved that. HSE students, it's a little bit trickier with them, but I know some of them, especially those who are tutoring, really like that they can schedule a time with a tutor, and know that time is set aside for them. And they can also see when it's blocked off. And if they have a question, or if they're wondering if they can do it at the same time, like if they know somebody else is tutoring at that same time, they could contact the tutor and make sure that's all right. And so it has really helped, but it does involve a lot of giving the students that opportunity to build that skill. One of the things with Google Calendar is you have to learn it and then teach it. You can't just be like, oh, here's Google Classroom, which it's Google Calendar, It's a good tool, but it doesn't mean anything if they don't know how to utilize it. All right, how does this work in the workspace? And I think I've already touched base on this because I was really excited because this really, really worked out this this last week for everyone in our department. But it's finding out the ins and out times of coworkers. You can set up those times where you're like, I'm in office or out of office. It's easier since we are all here, we kind of figure it out, but all of them know, like right now, they just had to pull up Google Calendar, like, oh, she's in a meeting right now, so we can't do that. Or if students come in and want to talk, they know that time and that availability. It's also easier to manage and navigate meeting times and appointments. So like I said, this last week, we have been trying to get all of our new teachers, new applicants, people coming in and out. And so I really sat down and told our staff, please, please, please make sure you are looking at the Google Calendar just to see what time both myself and the other coordinator that I work with, when we're available, because we're going to be like hit and miss. And it actually has helped the flow of our program. There have been a lot of questions that have come, and they're like, I just need 15 minutes of your time to discuss this. All right, they put it in the calendar. I know it's coming up. I go over there, we talk about it, and then I'm able to get back to my work. This has been one of the first times that I have ever seen Google Calendar make life so smooth. And then, of course, I threw a monkey wrench in it and was out one day when I said I wasn't going to be. But, you know, things happen. And so it's really nice to actually be able to say, here it is. Everyone here can look at my calendar. It will change. Just make sure it's updated. Can we fit a time in? Can we not? It's a wonderful, wonderful tool for staying organized, which is not one of my strong skills, but it's getting better because of Google Calendar. Yes, calendar. I thought I said classroom again. Here we go. So one of my favorite things about all tools Google, it's always the app.google.com. So we're going to go to calendar. Oops, maybe. We're going to calendar right quick because there are several different things that you can do. So this is the basic, or this is one of the views I have. Of course, you can always change it. If you go ahead or back, you can always hit this today button and I'll bring you back to this time. Up here, you can go by days, weeks, months, years, find the schedule, or for 4 days. I like to go by weeks because it just gives me a better image. Now, let's just say, for the sake of it, and I'm going to pull this up because I already pulled it up and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I loved it so much. But let's say that I'm on the DELT webinar. So all of the webinars that we have for the NM DELT team, the Propel and all of that, all of them are on here. And so I'm going to look right here where it says search for people. And I'm going to search for 3 people. I'm going to search for Jamie. I'm going to search for myself. And then my favorite one is I'm going to search for Tina. Okay. Now with that, it has brought all of the times that we were unavailable. So let's just say I needed to meet with these three people. And I wanted to set up a time. Well, I see there is a tiny little spot right here. So if I click on it, it is automatically going to generate an event with all of my people. So I don't have to add any people on there and I don't have to guess. Now, if I wanted to make sure that everyone could meet at this time, then I could message them and be like, hey, I just wanted to make sure. But if all of us had said, just find a time on Google Calendar that we would be available, then this would be a good tool to utilize. And I can add more guests if I want. It doesn't have to be anybody in your program, but it just won't sync their calendar. So I could add more guests. I could remove guests. It doesn't matter. I would always want to add a title and then the time that I want to meet.
So
now,
can you explain more about that? So they have to be in your program for it to sync? Or
yeah, so for example, if I were to look for my personal, oh, you know what? I'm going to use Jamie's because I know JB's ABCLC is on here. So if I were to click on Jamie's ABQALC calendar, it shows right here, calendar cannot be shown because it's not within the domain. Now, can I still send her an email and invite her to a meeting? Yes. It just won't pop up her personal calendar because it's not in the same domain.
So if I'm using NM Delt, anybody in NM Delt would show up?
Yes.
anything that's on their NMDELT calendar. So for example, if I have something on my ABQ ALC calendar, but it's not on my NMDELT calendar, it won't show up on this. So it isn't perfect, but it still is very useful.
It is very useful if you have everyone working in the same domain.
Yeah.
And so like our program here, we live and breathe Google. That is for sure. We all have an NMDELT account. So it's easy for all of our program to be pretty much on the same level. And so it works. So anyone in an NMDELT would definitely do it. Now, if you're just doing, if you had your personal email, and you know everyone is using their personal email, that would connect because it's just gmail.com. And so anyone with a gmail.com, they would have, because they're that same domain, they would have that. But if it's NMDELT, it will only show NMDELT calendars. Good question. So like I said, you could search for people, and this is the best way to collaborate. And I know this is where my students come in, and they always type in my name, and then they figure out a time that I'm not busy, and they come down. So if I forget to put something on here, or if it's outside of my working hours, and they come down, then I just have to make sure that my calendar is up to date with what's available. So if you wanted to use it in that aspect, you definitely could. You just have to make sure that you are prepared and that you have completed your week. And so this is why I said I love trying to look at a time with Tina, because Tina is always busy. So hers is a really good one. You're welcome, Tina. Or thank you, Tina, and you're welcome. I'm using you as an example. But because Tina's always so busy and trying to find a time to meet up with her, this is one of the easiest ways to do it because she is very good about putting all of her time there and making sure that people know when she's available or when she's not. And I know she has another program as well, but because we're talking Google Calendar, we're just going to focus on Google Calendar right now. Perfect. And then this can go, you can go as a head or as ahead as you want. And then this also helps to reinforce, like if you know you had a meeting, you can always be like, oh, when was that meeting? When did we meet? I can always go back and figure that out. So that way you can re-collaborate, or if you know you wrote down something, you can always go back and figure out when those dates were. All right. Any questions on Google Calendar?
So, can you show me any bigger that little button for today? And
yeah. Okay. So here's the today button. So let's just say I went 5 weeks ahead. Okay. So here's 5 weeks ahead, and I want to go back to today. I'm just going to hit this today button. So I'm here in February 13th, hit the today button, and it brings me back to January 13th, or the week of.
So how would you change that to monthly or weekly? Or
that's this button here.
Where's that?
On the
okay.
Right-hand corner. See, and you did not see that. I didn't have to like figure out with my hands which one was right and left. Upper right-hand corner, you would hit this weeks, and it could change it to days, where you would just see the 1 day straight down, or the month, which would give you this whole month overview, which can get a little bit messy. So if you're trying to scroll down several months, this might be a good one rather than going through weeks. And then you can always do a year. The year doesn't show you anything except the dates. It doesn't show you any meetings. So the ones that I would go with would be day, week, or month. I prefer to see on just 1 week at a time because it's easier to see what happened yesterday or what's happening ahead, anything like that. It gives a better idea rather than like day by day. I know there are some people that like to just look at that 1 day. So if you just wanted to look at 1 day, switch it up here today. Any other questions? No? Awesome. So like I said, this is really, really good. It has helped, especially this last week. And I think moving forward, it has changed our program just with the flow. We're not running around. We're not trying to rush and find people and who's here, who's there. It's really, really been easy just to know where everyone is and what everybody's going to be doing, and has actually relieved a lot of stress. Um, I'm very high stressed. I'm one of those high functioning anxiety is like what they like to call it. And so like I get very frustrated when things aren't in place. And so this week has been one of the smoothest weeks that I've ever experienced while working in AE. And I've been in here for like 8 years. And so just having that smooth transition of where I'm able to share ideas and share times availability with all of our staff members, not just with a select group, but all of us. There's 5 full-time here, or 4 full-time here on staff. And so it's really nice to be able to balance all of that and not have to run back and forth trying to figure out where everyone is or what everyone's doing. Oh, all right. We're going to jump through, and I think we're doing good on time. So my other favorite tool is Google Chat. Google Chat is wonderful because it is a way to message people in a safe environment. You cannot, it's always in the back end. So if messages were sent between students, they can't really delete them. You can always re-find them. You can always retrieve them. So it's a very safe space. You know who is messaging. And it's one of those things where I say, don't share your personal information, your personal contact information, just as a general rule. It keeps you safe. It keeps the students safe for anything. It can't be like a he said, she said, because you can always pull it up and it's always there. With Google Chat, you can also see if a person is offline or online as long as they update their status. And sometimes their status changed to like online but busy, or stepped away for a moment, something like that. So as long as you change your status, that's perfectly, people know where you are, especially if you're working online the majority of the time. It's really good. You can create groups and spaces. I love spaces. It's really, really fun. There were some interesting things that I learned recently that I really, really like. But you can also create groups where it's multiple people messaging at one time. Sharing attachments is really quick and it's really efficient and it's easy to find rather than trying to figure it out in Google Drive. If you are not as organized in Google Drive as some of us, I don't know who, but you know, there's some things where it's a little bit easier. And then it's just overall, it's safe conversations. It's a safe place to have a conversation because you know those messages, if you ever did have to retrieve them for any horrible reason, they're always going to be there, and you know that you can always have that backup.
The only thing on Google Chat, they haven't changed it, have they, where you can phone someone?
No, that is not, last I knew that was not an option.
And that's what I miss, you know, because I forget what was the one we had before Google Chat.
Hangout.
But you could, yeah, you could phone each other, and that helped so much with my students that were online to pair them up, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it does very quickly. You can add in a Google Meet, but that takes up, I know a lot of our students, that bandwidth, they don't have it. And so it's, I do miss that call chat, is that call feature as well. But last I saw, I did not see it on there. And I think because I think you can get like a Google number, which is what I think they're trying to move to, is if you want to do that, then have a Google number.
It's called Google Voice.
Is it Google Voice now?
I think there's a free option, or maybe there used to be, but yeah, Google Voice is the calling feature now, where you get a phone number.
Yeah, I know. I was doing some research and I was really sad when they took that feature away because it was real easy. And I know our students just loved it. They were like, I need to call right quick. And they would hit that button. And so that feature isn't there anymore. But they still have the Meet where you can add a Meet link, but it's not ideal. So when we're using Google Chats, how does this work in the workspace? I love that we're able to send updates and training opportunities. We can ask questions and sharing materials. We can also create tasks and stay on tasks. It's a really nice way to make sure that everyone is in the loop. I know there for a while when they changed some of the things in Gmail, I'm just picking on Tina today. a lot of Tina's emails would end up going to a different folder, or I'd never find them, or it was just because it shuffled them into different categories. I always lost track of a lot of emails. And so chats just made it easier to get updates, get information that wasn't, an email long link, any flyers, PDFs, anything that was shared in Drive. It's a really quick, easy place that we can go back and look at them, which has been really nice. Another thing for me with chats is I don't particularly like giving out my personal number. Even though a lot of us, we're really cool, we have that that comfortableness with each other as coworkers, but there's a certain thing about separating work from personal. So that way, if it is work related, it still stays here in this center. If it is personal, then it gets to my personal. And so we always try to maintain those boundaries. And I know this was something that we had talked about as soon as when we were online, when COVID first hit, is having those personal boundaries. It's making sure that work stays work and personal stays personal. And Google Chats has really helped with doing that, where we all know and we all have an understanding that if it is work related, please use chats. If it's something personal or goofy that we want to talk about, use our personal. But don't mix the two, because you never know who's going to be looking, or if something happens, if it just it's a safer environment, and it's a safer way, and it's just an easier and smarter way to do things. At least with our program, we don't try to share a whole lot of student data. We don't really do that, but just making those boundaries. And it's really good to have those. A lot of people are like, oh no, you can't have boundaries, but yes, you should have boundaries, making work work and making personal personal. So Google Chat has really helped with that as well. How does it work in the classroom? Sending out reminders and updates, reaching out to students to schedule tutoring or coaching, and sending out materials. Again, it also helps. It's just safer sending out or separating that personal from professional. I know a lot of programs do say, hey, make sure that you aren't giving out your personal information. And I know after some time we get really comfortable with our students and we get really close to them. So it's really easy for us to want to give out our personal information, but this just makes sure that it's a safe place to do so. And I think I keep coming back to that because those boundaries are so essential. Just for as an instructor, as an admin, just for your own sanity, it's a safe place to be, and it's a good thing to have to make sure that there's that separation and they know where they can do either one. But with Google Chats, it's always good to send out those reminders and updates, especially so like our college here, they don't have access to our alert system. So like if there's inclement weather or anything like that and the college is shut down, they don't have access to it because they're not technically a CCC student. So they rely on us to make sure that that information gets to them. Before we had this, it was coming down here and spending 2 to 3 hours trying to call all of our students to make sure that they knew that we weren't going to have it. But now with Google Chat, because we have everybody on a group and everybody knows how to use Google Chat, we send out one message and it gets around. And so it just helps to make our lives a lot easier. Those updates, those reminders, anything that we need to, especially last minute, to send out to students is very, very helpful. Cool. So again, chat.google.com. We're going to go there right quick. Just look at some of the features. Oh, see, and I already have one up because I forgot about it. So you can find chat in Gmail, but I wanted to actually go to the app because the app is really nice if you want it on a separate page. And I actually like bringing up the app a little bit more than using it in Gmail, just because I can have that separation and it doesn't drive me half as crazy. But you can definitely find it in Gmail, but the app is really nice. So the first thing that we have is just normal chats, individual chats, where you can pick one person, click on their name, and send them an individual message. So I'm going to click on Jamie's. So Jamie's here, it shows when you sent it, it shows what you sent, and the nice thing here is I can click on this button and I can import anything from Google Drive. I can connect any sort of file that I want. The nice thing is also I can attach PDFs, I can send pictures all right here, and it's an easier way to get to it sometimes. Or rather than sending an email or anything like that, I can send it here, they can download it and open it as a normal application or as a normal download. It does have all of the chat features, or like we were talking, is that they had Hangouts at one point, but it does have, you can type. It does have the formatting, which is really nice. Like if you want something to be bolded, like really stand out, you have that. You also have the italicize, underline, you can change color, you can make bullet points or strikeout. So there's a lot of different options that they incorporated here. So it's not just like writing down a message and sending it. Now you can put emphasis. You can really, really design it to where there's certain words that your students or anyone can like really get attracted to. So if you say, do not bring, or please do not wear slippers to work, you can emphasize the do not on there or anything like that. That was the first thing that came to mind. But we all know, like, we don't do that, hopefully. But it's really nice to have that option. We also have the emojis. So I know a lot of students, especially ESL students, love to use those emojis, especially when they realize a word and they can connect it to a picture. They love that so much. We have the options to add a GIF. Some students like that. I think they like the emojis a little bit better, but either or. And then of course, uploading any sort of documents. And there is that Meet feature that we were talking about. And I just realized that my thing is super small. So let's make that a little bigger. So all of these options down here are really nice to incorporate. You can do individual or you can do group messaging. So here I have myself and Jamie into this group. Since I am in the webinars account, excuse me, my brain just shut off. Since we are in the webinars account, I went ahead and talked to myself, and Jamie is on here as well. So we could just do a normal group chat where everyone's going and talking, and that's really nice. Same features and all of that. The one thing that I did want to add, or the one thing that I did want to mention, is that a group and a space are different. Spaces have a lot more options, and I love spaces because it has a way to sort everything out, so that way it's not just all in one big long chat. So I'm going to create a quick space. I'm not going to give it a name. I'm just going to add Jamie and myself. Well, I do need to add a name. Sorry. So with this group, okay, I can add files here. I can add any sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and just add, oh, I'm not going to add that right now. But I can share a file on here. And if I share a file, it'll come to this files tab. So if I have a lot of files, I wanted to show one, but it's on our personal. And so I didn't really want to show our personal stuff. But if you are like with a whole bunch of people and you're sharing different documents and all of that, it would be a good idea to create a space rather than a group. Because in a space, I can still have my chat. But if I wanted to find, oh, I needed the registration form, and I know we were working on it, let me come to my files and it will be here. Whatever file that you share will be in this files tab. Now, the other wonderful thing that we actually started utilizing, because we are working on a really nice project for our program, is this task. So I can add a task and say, all right, you need to do this here, you need to do that here, and we can create a date and an assignment. So if I created a task, please contact Meriah. I can assign it to Jamie, and I can say which time. I want you to do it by Friday. You're welcome, Jamie. She's going to give me a notification, and I'm going to hit add. So now I know that Jamie has to do this activity by tomorrow. With someone who relies so much on deadlines, because if I don't have a deadline, it will never be done. For me, at least, that is how I operate. If I don't have a deadline, it's not going to be done. So in our group, we actually have this where we are now very, very structured, and we know, okay, I know you are doing this, I'm doing this, you're going to do that. We never overlap. And this has been very, very helpful to make sure who everybody knows what they're doing. We haven't tried this in the classroom setting yet, but we have done it with our group of teachers as we are building one of our programs, and it has gone so smoothly to know who's doing what and who I need to reach out to if I need to ask questions, or if I need that part of the activity or that material, then I know who to reach out to and know that it's either going to be done or it's in the process of being done. And then at any time you can delete it, or you can view where I said it in chat. Now, it comes back to the chat because it just shows that I have created this task. But if we were talking about it 3 days ago, I can go back to see what that discussion was. And it's a really, really nice feature to see. Now, of course, because there's nothing really here, I just created it. It doesn't show it as nicely. But if you have these very long discussions, and sometimes they trail off and sometimes they come back and all of that, it's a really nice way to search for things. Also, you can search keywords in the chat and figure out, like if you remember there was something that you guys had talked about, but you didn't remember if it was resolved or if anything had got into it, you can search for it, and then it would bring up anything related to that. So you can see here it says search and testing, which means I'm only going to be searching in this space. So chat has so many features. Like I said, it is one of the, for me, one of the most essential tools that I have had to use that allows us to better communicate with everyone. And when I mean that is, this is actually something that I just recently started using more effectively. I was using it before, but I wasn't using it to its fullest potential until this term. And so I know we did that activity at the very beginning where it was, how do you feel your skills are? And I know myself, it needed work just because I thought at first that I was doing pretty good. I had pretty good communication skills and collaborating skills. But now that I see that there's so much more that I could be doing, yeah, it needs a little bit more work, at least with my coworkers. And there's always that. You're always at a point where you can continue to learn how to better communicate, better collaborate with people, because activities are going to change. Your students, your environments are going to change. So what is going to be best fit for your program and your needs? Cool. Any questions for Google Chat? There's a lot. There's so much that we could do. We could really I could spend hours on Google Chat. I could spend hours on Google Calendar, but of course we don't have hours or time for that. But there is so much. It's just a matter, again, same thing that I said with Google Calendar. It's not just something you can tell your students, here it is, here's this application, start using it. It's something that's going to take time to actually teach them how to utilize it and how to best utilize it. Questions?
I think it'll be a lot better when I just get to go play with it.
That's a big part of it. Is just like getting in there and getting going. And it's, when you look at it, there's so many options. There's so much potential with it that you have to figure out step by step. Is like, what's going to be first? How can I make this work? This one part, and then slowly add on every other part. If you try to do it all at once, you're going to get overwhelmed and frustrated with it. So take one part and take it bit by bit instead of just trying to go in and do everything at once. Cool. All right. So overall, I think we're kind of wrapping up. I think we're at a good point. Are there any questions or any things that you would like to discuss further on?
No, I learned things for sure.
Awesome.
I'm terrible with calendars, so that's why I wanted to see this.
Oh,
Yeah,
calendars.
about the tasks too. So even I learned stuff. It was great.
Mhm.
Oh, this is like I said, I think this is honestly this term, and we've only been in it for 2 weeks already. Um, and I have learned so much, and I have just in the 2 weeks. Of course, we all said my New Year's resolution is going to be more organized. I absolutely hate that resolution, but I make it every year because I'm like, I'm going to determine. And so I had to dive in and figure out a lot of these tools. I needed to actually help me keep my sanity for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's
um,
amazing that there's all this that we just at our fingertips that we don't use, you know?
yeah, and sometimes it's just because of the time. Like, when am I going to have time to play with it? Like you were saying, it's just jumping in there and figuring it out. And that's really what it comes down to, is just setting aside some time to learn one or two things
Yeah.
about it. So I think that brings us to the end. Is we do have our lineup for this spring session. So if you haven't, oh, I don't remember if Tina sent this one out or not, but if not, it will be coming that way. Is that we do have our schedule for the next until June, for the next until June, for until June. And so that means we have our webinar today and our workshop where you can bring all of your questions. If that's the day that you actually want to just jump in and start playing with it, we will be here on January 27th to answer any questions. If you want to practice with us, we'll be here to do that with you, just so that way you can explore the different features of Google Calendar and Google Chat. And that will be January 27th at noon as well.
Awesome.
And we'll send out another, or Tina will send out another reminder about it. There'll be another flyer, so that way you don't forget that that date is coming up. And all of this has been recorded, and there we go. Wrong page. I'm one step too fast. Again, if you do have any questions at all, you can always reach out to myself or Jamie. Both of us would be absolutely happy to, if you want further questions, if you want further help, we could definitely sit down and discuss some of these things with you, just work one-on-one, or any other questions that you have. You can always reach out to either one of us, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. All of these sessions have been recorded or are being recorded, and they will be on the Propel website. So if you have not gotten into Propel, you would go to the Propel website. Oh, I don't know it off the top of my head. Is it propelnm.org?
Sorry about that. I was muted. Yes, propelnm.org.
Thank you. I was like, oh no, that one I wasn't prepared for. But it is propelnm.org. And then you would go to where it says click here to enter the learning portal. And if you are here, you're going to want to log in with your NM Delt if you have an NM Delt. And then from there, you'll be able to, if you do not have one, you can always ask Tina, and Tina will get you in. Or if you have any issues, refer to Tina, because Tina will help you out. And then you can register for the webinar course. And I think I forgot to change the courses on here, but I believe ours is called Tech Talks. And so you'll be able to go in there and sign up for the course or sign up to rewatch all of these and get credit for watching them as well. There we go, adult education. I had just one too many slides on there. So it is the Tech Talk ones, and you would go in there, and all of them should be posted with some sort of exit question, just to verify that you watched it. If your program is offering credit for doing some of these webinars. And I believe that is it for today. Do you have any other questions? Anything that's burning in your mind that you want to share, or?
No, hopefully I make it to the workshop because that'll be very helpful.
Awesome. Yes. And we look forward to seeing you. Anyone else, they're always welcome. They don't necessarily have had to watch this one. Of course, it is helpful, but they don't have to. If they just want to jump in and try to get their hands a little into it, then we are more than happy to sit down and help anyone that needs it.
Awesome.
Awesome. And I think we are done for today. If there's no more questions, we're done.
I just want to put another little plug in for Google Chat, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking up the average response time. So Google Chat also is like a text message, especially if you have students and employees download it on their phones. And so for me, if you need to get a hold of me quickly, Google Chat is definitely the way to go. And the average response time for a text message is 90 seconds. So most people are going to see that right away. An email, the average response time is 3.5 hours. And phone calls now, because if they don't recognize your number, they don't answer.
Right.
And if they're like me, they may not check their voicemail for 2 or 3 days. So you may or may not get a response from a phone call. So just the way technology has changed our culture, that the fastest way to get a response from somebody these days is a text message, and Google Chat acts like that.
That's a great point. I didn't think I love how you said it's like, what did you say, 3 hours for an email?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, for me it's like 3 to 4 business days. That's why I'm like, wow, 3.5 hours. I don't know who's answering 3.5 hours, but that's pretty good. Like,
and Nancy, from the beginning, when you were talking about your ENMU email with your Delt email, what I would recommend is to work with your IT people and find out how to forward your ENMU email to your Delt account. So then all of your emails in one place.
Yeah, you showed me and I tried that, but I just couldn't get it to work. So yeah, I guess I need to do that. Go to them.
Yeah, if you want to schedule a one-on-one meeting with actually any of the 3 of us, we should be able to help you through that. Or again, working with your IT department, because they know specifically how your ENMU email works and how to forward that to Delt, since that's the one that you're checking most often.
Right. Yeah, because I miss so much. I'm like, I didn't see that. It's because they always send it. I ask them over and over, please send to my NM Delt, but they'll forget and it goes to the NMUR, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's easier to just forward your email than try to retrain everybody else.
Yeah, true. Very true.
well, that's all I have for today, and I just looked at the time, and we're doing pretty good. I love it. So thank you all for participating. It was absolutely wonderful. I love having these interactive um, sessions. So we will see you again in 2 weeks.
I'll see you. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.